Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. I know it's not morning, but I'll go with it just because I said it. I hope you guys are doing all right. It is an evening show. I didn't get the chance to do a show this morning because I had doctor's appointments back to back. So there is that. However, I am here now. Let's do the news in regards to the latest on what has been happening. I've been sitting here for the last maybe 30, 40 minutes. And I was running through my mind what I wanted to say. And I realized I was basically doing a show after show after show because I was trying to think through it. Because I was trying to think through it. What I want to talk about is the memorandum of understanding between the US and Iran. This has been leaked. And in being leaked, it's been leaked from both sides, from Iran's side or Iranian media, but it's also been leaked out of U.S. media, like the Wall Street Journal, or for that matter, the other, it was Axios, effectively, the Israeli firsters, Mossad mouthpiece, because he typically prints pretty much all of their stuff. As I read through the Memorandum of Understanding, I listened to a lot of the commentary that other people were making, especially in the alt media. Many of them have come to very similar conclusions as the people who have come on this show. So fair enough. What I don't think people are really nailing home is what comes next. Now, some of this is obviously a blind alley, and there's no way to effectively know exactly because events are fluid and events are unpredictable. One thing I would say that is entirely predictable going forward, and I guess I will name this, we have created a monster. Now, I don't mean monster in a negative sense like the psychopaths that run the United States. I mean a monster in the sense of a country that has just been shown its power. It knows its power. It's confident. And it can't unsee that level of power and confidence moving forward. And obviously, I'm talking about Iran. Iran looked into the abyss looked back, and they changed and adapted to, let's say, the reality of conditions that they were presented with despite what they wanted. What I mean by that is, over and over again, Iran, just like the Russians, will be pragmatic. And the problem with pragmatism is pragmatism makes sense in the world where everybody has your value set, or for that matter, everybody agrees that pragmatism is the way forward. Pragmatism does not work in a world where that is not taken as it's given. Meaning, just because a person is pragmatic doesn't mean that person is weak. Restraint in and of itself is a strength. Or like what they say, discipline, hidden discipline is the most discipline, the ability to restrain yourself from acting. But what I think they realized, and they had to kind of adjust themselves to, is that that wasn't working. It was always considered to be weakness, and weakness is preyed upon by psychopaths, meaning predation. Weakness invites predation. That's the point that I'm trying to get at. In which case, if you've noticed, in the most recent strikes, they've responded with overwhelming attacks by the US. And even in the case of Israel going after Beirut, they hit Israel immediately. They hit Israel, not because Israel hit them, because Israel hit Lebanon. This is new. For the longest time, we've had attacks on Lebanon without really anybody getting involved. No longer. And you have to wonder, Why? Right? Like when I read this document, and I'm going to show it for the audience so they can see it for themselves. I thought to myself, the mind of a person as a president to write this document up, sign this document in an agreement. Now, let's be very clear. This is not an end to the war. This is not a ceasefire because we're supposedly already in the middle of a ceasefire. This is a memorandum of understanding, basically the boundaries of debate that will take place when trying to come to some kind of terms for a deal. Again, I am nailing that down. I'm not a triumphalist on this. For all intents and purposes, the war continues until the war stops. And up to this point, the war has not stopped. And I'm not of mind that the United States is effectively going to call it a day. This could fall apart at any particular moment. And it may be engineered to fall apart. So I want to put a pin in that point because that point that needs to be banged and nailed home. But as you look at the document, it is very hard for me to take anyone seriously that doesn't find this to be an unmitigated, outright, complete capitulation, even complete with reparations of hundreds of billions of dollars. Losers pay reparations, not winners. The level of confidence to effectively tell the United States, get your dog in order, all of these wars stop, meaning Lebanon also is included in the deal. If I'm not mistaken, that's one of the first items on the list. Again, I'm going to show it. I just want to make this point clear. The confidence that needed to be in Iran to say, these are our core demands. This is what we require to end this war that you yourself started. And to stand by it. Apparently, this deal had already been on the table for weeks. It just took a while for the Trump administration to kind of absorb what they were about to sign and to get their minds right to spin it as a victory. To be very clear, what Trump is going to call a victory never existed. Iran was not trying to procure nukes, as you would know if you watched this channel. That was never postulated. There was never something that they were seeking to get. They had the nuclear scientists. If they wanted to get them, they would have had them. People like me were the ones saying you should have nukes, and it is a failure of leadership that you don't have nukes. They didn't, meaning obviously they didn't agree with me in that take. They had fought against it, and so they weren't trying to pursue them. A country that went with this idea that Saddam Hussein had nuclear weapons or weapons of mass destruction, and then recycled it without even going through the steps to pretend that it was true. We did it again. I don't know why anybody believed that, but it didn't require anybody to believe it. Oftentimes, arguments are made not because they're good arguments, but because it makes it look like there's an actual argument. Hence, WMDs, which is what Donald Trump effectively ran with. Donald Trump, just like in Ukraine, where they asked Trump, hey, when you were negotiating with Putin, what did you get out of it? And Trump said, well, I got a guarantee that they won't take all of Ukraine. It was never postulated that they were going to take all of Ukraine. Something very similar is happening here, where they said, hey, Trump, what did you get out of this? Well, they're not going to have any nukes. And the JCPOA sucked. And Obama was horrible. And they would have gotten a nuke if they would have stuck with the JCPOA. This is infinitely worse on two fronts. In one sense, the deal itself, but in the second sense, America Powered has been tested and found wanting. The second part is the worst part. From the standpoint of hawks and neocons and people who are looking at this thing as weird eagle that can look over the world, the second part is the worst part. Because what you've demonstrated in the second part is that, A, this idea of putting military bases around a particular target, okay, those bases are just vulnerabilities. Full stop. Two, you've demonstrated that you can't protect your allies and the bases that you effectively lily-pad around the world. They are vulnerable, especially to larger countries, Russia, China, and Iran, obviously. This is not great. If you are China and Russia, you're looking at this. What are you saying to yourself? America Power may be the best, but it is not necessarily something that can overcome modern technology and the modern ways of war. You can say, well, we fought a war in Iraq. Yes, that was 20 something years ago. And obviously, the progression of war and how wars are fought have just fundamentally changed. We have not accommodated those changes. And to be honest, we have a military that's built for the 80s, not necessarily for the modern battlefield. I'm making the point of this power projection stuff doesn't quite work in our current parlance. We should have learned that when we were trying to go after the Houthis, and we had to come to a humiliating deal where we said, don't hit us, we don't hit you, and even throwing Israel over the side in that particular deal. I'm saying that these are negatives for people who firmly believe in this imperialist project, which all of these people in Washington do. The deal is humiliating. And you think to yourself, what is in a person's mind to make a deal like that? Is it panic? Is it fear about going off of a cliff that was coming up in regards to oil? I mean, the thought was by August and September, the tap will be empty. Hence, Donald Trump's reaction of political expedience to just open the strait. Let's be very clear. The Strait of Hormuz was not closed before Donald Trump initiated the war of aggression. There's that. Donald Trump went for a decapitation strike to smash the Iranian state with the idea that they were going to be able to overturn the state, or at the very least destroy the state. You killed Ayatollah. You did not destroy the state. That objective was not accomplished. The Strait of Hormuz being firmly under Iranian control, they're not giving that up. And even in the deal, they don't give that up. Again, these are failures. These are clear failures. They were never trying to get nukes. So using that as part of a justification for something that you got out of it, you're claiming that you got something that was never postulated. This is utter failure. The remaining things on the list have to do with sanction relief, $300 billion in reparations, billions in frozen assets. I think it's like $24 billion in frozen assets. Iran is going to control the strait. They're going to charge some kind of environmental fee in association with that. Their oil is going to be able to run free. None of these things were there prior to the war. The key point that I think I want to make before showing the document is that what we're going to see coming is a new Iran. And in the same way that the Russians had this confidence coming off of them after the Yeltsin years, after the special military operation started and the super weapons started flying, and you could see what the Russian military was capable of. I think you're going to see something very similar with Iran. I think they've come to the conclusion, taught by us, looking at the abyss, that pragmatism is considered weakness, regardless of whether it is or not in the absolute, in the way that it is taken from the standpoint of the powers that is their enemy. It is taken as weakness. Hence, the last responses that they were effectively making were overwhelming for the attacks that the U.S. leveled. Meaning, this idea of theatrics is over with. This idea of a tit for tat, it's over with. It seems that they've come to the conclusion that nothing can slide. Meaning, which is going to make this very interesting, what happens moving forward regarding Israel. If Israel attacks Lebanon, and by the way, one of the Iranian commanders has already come out saying Israel is violating the agreement. We signed that agreement. They are continuing to attack Lebanon. There will be consequences if they continue to do so. The interesting thing is, what does Trump do? Oh, that is fascinating. Meaning, it is difficult to predict what happens in regards to U.S., Israel, Iran. It is not difficult to predict that Iran is a new power, and that new power is going to be asserted in the confidence that they exude in the use of military power when they need to use military power. No more threats or no more theatrics, hard power in usage. And the question becomes, what happens with Israel? Now, obviously, Netanyahu is freaking out because for him, this is a catastrophe. You're giving Iran money There's that, right? So we're getting war booty um, from winning this war. B, you're talking about infusing hundreds of billions of dollars. I got to be honest, I don't believe that's going to happen. But you're talking about infusing hundreds of billions of dollars of private equity into Iran in order to help in reconstruction. Again, that's reparations. They may call it a different name. I'm going to call it reparations because that's effectively what it is. Um, Obviously, you're talking about an Iran that is going to be stronger after the war. Whereas the US power, from the standpoint of power projection and what people can see, has diminished. And again, we can't defend our bases. Their missiles get through. The same thing is true for Israel. They can't defend themselves. This is a new norm. And how that new norm unfolds is going to be utterly fascinating. Think for a moment of Israel continuing their attacks. And by the way, Donald Trump is trying to. There are all sorts of quotes that are coming out where Trump is angry at Netanyahu. Trump used the F bomb when he was talking to Netanyahu. To me, this comes across as trying to create separation between Israel and the United States to make it look as if Israel is an independent rogue actor when Israel is attacking Lebanon. That's what it seems like. Now, I've seen this too many times to accept this. The Biden administration did the same thing, right? Oh, Netanyahu, I can't believe he's doing that. Oh, I'm so angry at Netanyahu. Here's $20 billion. Trump was doing the same thing, and they're doing this now, which is why I don't really believe it. Is it possible that there's some kind of break in a specific moment? Yes, that's possible. Obviously, the problem that the United States has is that they're running out of energy, running out of oil. Israel doesn't seem to care all that much about that particular issue. Hence, there could be somewhat of a break because of the priorities of each person or each particular leader. That may be true, but I need to see that. I need to see that in reality. And what I mean by that is if Israel attacks Lebanon, Iran, doing God's work, smashes Israel, what does Trump do? Does Trump continue to give them money? Does Trump continue to give them weapons? Does Trump get militarily involved? The reason why I say I need to see what happens is because I don't trust this process. And because I don't trust this process, I'm very skeptical about whether or not this process goes forward in a way that creates an ultimate deal. That's what I mean. Is it possible? Yes. But it would require the US to curb its dog. And that's the part that is super interesting to me. As I told you, I am of mind that it is firmly the dog wagging the tail. The tail may not always know that it's the dog wagging the tail, but the dog learns that it has an owner when the owner pulls its leash. And the catch becomes, does the president pull the leash? There's that. Donald Trump has said some wild things recently in the context of Israel. She says some wild things. And I want to play one of these because, again, it goes to this whole thing of trying to create this level of separation. Obviously, there's going to be a huge amount of spin that comes out when the deal comes out. And spin is effectively starting now with JD Vance saying, we're not paying them money. Well, okay, we're quibbling with words. Well, this is an issue of semantics. Whether the United States is giving them $300 billion or whether the U.S. is helping with private equity to give them $300 billion, you're still investing money into the country. When Donald Trump was asked about the Lebanon issue, listen to what he says. This is, what a wild comment. What a wild comment right here. It's this, and this. And you can't see it. I can't. You see it. Give me 1 second.
And I didn't like Syria. I didn't
Let's play
like
it one more time.
where Israel's fighting Hezbollah too long and too many people are being killed. And you don't have to knock down an apartment house every time you're looking for somebody, because there are a lot of people in those apartment houses, and they're not all Hezbollah, that I can tell you. And I suggested to Israel to let Syria take care of Hezbollah. Because to be honest with you, I think they do a better job of doing it. And I didn't like Syria. I didn't like where 2 hours before we're signing the agreement that there was an attack in Lebanon, in Beirut. It wasn't like in the southern side, and it was in Beirut. I did not like that. I let them know that. I didn't like it, not at all. But I think that Syria, he's pulled that country together amazingly quickly. He's very capable. And he's been very good for me. He's protected everything that I've asked for, he's done. And
that clip is breathtaking for several reasons. One, Donald Trump is effectively saying, hey man, Israel's central thesis that Hezbollah and Hamas is hiding in every trash can, outhouse, random house, every apartment complex, every church, every hospital, and so we need to completely destroy all of those things. And we need to, kill each and every last one of them, even the babies and the women. And Trump is effectively saying, look, this is nonsense. You guys are blowing up apartment buildings when it's full well understood that not everybody in those apartment buildings are Hamas. Now, this is pretty amazing coming out of Trump, considering the first thing that we bombed was basically a girls' school, meaning the first thing that we did was murder children. So there's that, right? I don't believe for a moment that Donald Trump gives a shit about human life. Just to be clear, he's saying this almost as a repudiation, in the sense of, look, I need to make a deal. And in the sense of needing to make a deal, Israel is continuing hostilities with Lebanon, which implies that Lebanon is indeed part of the deal, regardless of what was coming out of some of the American audiences. That is his way of this kind of backhand slap to the central thesis of Israel's basic argument for why they need to murder as many people as possible. On the flip side of that, he says, let Syria do it. You mean the jihadists, the ISIS leader, Jelani, that you shook his hand and said, hey, this guy looks great. That guy with the tough past. So you are effectively saying, hey, why don't you let the terrorists deal with Hezbollah? Why don't you take a seat? Let the terrorists do it. That's pretty amazing. Jelani's jihadist terrorist dogs are what Trump effectively wants to use to go after Hezbollah in the South, claiming that they, who Israel has already destroyed all of their weapons, would do a better job. That's amazing. That's just amazing. I don't even know what to really say about that. That is a bizarre comment. That is a bizarre comment. By the way, it could foretell that that is what the US is pivoting to do, which effectively says, okay, Israel can attack Lebanon. Fair enough. Let Jelani's dogs do it, since they are not necessarily under the agreement. That is what it sounds like he is trying to imply and he's trying to say. Vanessa Beeley, who's going to be here on Thursday, has pointed out that the movements of the Syrian military, in this case, Jelani's animals, have gotten closer and closer to the Lebanese border in a way that, which he considers to be threatening. That this is not just basic defensive maneuvers, that these are maneuvers with the idea of a potential attack. I'm going to put her article below because she goes into it. Her reporting is fantastic. And considering I know several people in Lebanon, it's a bit worrying. This is the article that she wrote. Her reporting is fantastic. All right, let's go to the document itself. Let's go to the document itself. You have Vance, who's running cover or spin. You have Trump, who's trying to sell it as a victory. You have the Israelis who are freaking out. You have the Israeli firsters who are losing their absolute minds. Obviously, for Netanyahu, this would be a worst case scenario because, from his point of view, I need these wars to keep going. Now, that's assuming that this even stops, like meaning at the end of that there's some kind of resolution to it. That Trump says, "I'm out. I don't want to deal with this. I'm already getting hit." In regards to fuel costs, that the expectation is, by the way, just to be clear on that front too, they're expecting weeks before the Strait of Hormuz is opened in earnest. So whatever pressure Trump was under, right here, for him, it was palpable. Weeks, weeks. Gas prices might have gone down, but that's gone down on jawboning. The reality of it is a material issue, not just a theoretical issue of whether the war is over with. Not to mention the war, as I keep pointing out, it's not over with. So let's go into the deal. So this is fantastic site, DD Geopolitics, Sarah Bill's outfit. And yes, I did contact Sarah. When I got back, I tried to make amends with everybody. All right. Israel Channels 12, Barak Ravid says that he has obtained key points for the memorandum of understanding. So this is, again, the Mossad whisper. The Mossad whisper. Iran, the U.S., and their allies will cease hostilities, including Lebanon. So again, coming out of the Israel firster, first thing in the memo, stop the fighting. Get your dog in order. Get your dog in order. Let's see if I can show this in a different way. Nope. Yeah. Rumble sucks. Let's see. U.S. and Iran pledged to resolve issues of disposal of a rich uranium stockpile. Under no circumstances is Iran going to give the United States this uranium. It's outrageous that the U.S. is even at their doorstep murdering people to have the conversation about it. Iran shouldn't have to give the United States a goddamn thing. Full stop. Let's keep going. The U.S. and Iran to discuss enrichment issues and Iran's nuclear needs. Again, the U.S. has nothing to do with that. Iran will maintain status quo in its nuclear program as long as negotiations continue. Let's keep going. The U.S. will lift the naval blockade, not impose new sanctions, and will not increase forces in the region during negotiations. Iran will make the necessary arrangements to ensure safe passage of commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz, free of charge for 60 days. They may not charge them, but they may charge an environmental fee, which is a fee. U.S. pledges to make frozen Iranian assets available to use with implementation of the memorandum of understanding. Obviously, Iran is not going to trust the United States. From my understanding, $12 billion of that has already been given. I think the expected amount is $24 billion. Let's keep going. If a final agreement is reached, the U.S. will withdraw its forces within 30 days and lift all sanctions on Iran. You can imagine if you're going to lift all sanctions on Iran, they're going to be an economic powerhouse in that region. Again, part of the reason that Israel's freaking out. U.S. to give Iran temporary sanctions waiver to sell oil during negotiations. So we don't need your waiver, but okay. Meaning, who the hell are you? Like, many of these things keep boiling down to me of who the F are you? Now, obviously, this is about power, not right or wrong. I'm trying to make the point, though, that the power balance has been reshuffled in the context of a conflict to determine that very power balance. Negotiations will be held between Iran and Oman with the participation of our Gulf policy to define arrangements regarding shipping and maritime services. Okay, those are the only ones he had. The ones that are also apparently listed are from Al Arabia, to give some kind of context between the two different, and they're not really different. Where is it? This one. All right, let's share this one. This is what's coming out of Al Arabia. Iran and the United States, together with allies in the current war, declare open. Oh, where's my glasses? Okay. Iran and the United States, together with their allies in the current war, declare upon the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding an immediate and permanent end to the war on all fronts, including Lebanon, and undertake that from now on will not launch any hostile actions against each other and will refrain from the threat of use of force against each other. So Israel is supposed to cease its actions. It's supposed to cease threats against Lebanon. Iran wasn't threatening anybody, but the United States is supposed to also cease threats on Iran. Well, obviously, Israel is violating that already. Let's keep going. Iran and the United States will undertake, and the United States undertake to respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity and refrain from interfering in each other's informal affairs. Obviously, the U.S. attacked Iran, so that's about them, all about us. Immediately upon signing of the Memorandum of Understanding, the United States will lift the naval blockade and prevent any interference or obstruction against Iran and restore traffic within a maximum of 30 days to full capacity. The traffic of ships shall be proportional to the pre-war volume of traffic on Iran's part. The United States also undertakes and withdraws forces from the surrounding areas within 30 days after the final agreement. Now, again, final agreement is the buzzword, right? Final agreement is the buzzword. Upon signing the Memorandum of Understanding, Iran would immediately, okay, let's read that one. The implementation mechanism for this plan as part of the final agreement will be formulated within 60 days. Again, all of this stuff is being punted. I just need to straight the open. Punt, punt, punt. The United States commits to ending on a schedule to be agreed upon as part of the final agreement all types of sanctions currently facing Iran, including resolution of the United Nations Security Council and Board of Governors of the International Atomic Energy Agency, and all unilateral U.S. sanctions, both primary and secondary. Whew, that's going to be a toughie. But think about what's being said, though. All sanctions up in smoke. Again, the buzzword, final agreement. Final agreement. There's no guarantee. I don't even think there's honestly a good chance that they get to a final agreement. So you can promise whatever you want in that case. Just want to point that out. Iran reiterates that it would never produce nuclear weapons. Notice it said reiterates because they had already said they weren't going to do it. Iran and the United States have agreed the fate of enriched materials and the fate of all mutually agreed upon nuclear related issues, including Iran's nuclear needs, will be adequately addressed in a final agreement. Again, a punt, 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 punt. You can, you can give anything away if it's in the future that may never come to fruition. Final agreement. I suspect the important part to this is we get our money now. We're going to be in a standoff anyway. We're supposedly in a ceasefire anyway. What does it matter? We will go into negotiations with money in our pocket, whether we believe those negotiations will succeed or not. Is almost secondary to the point if we have the money in our pocket. That's further ahead than we were prior. Let's keep going. The United States undertakes that immediately after signing of the Memorandum of Understanding and until the date of the lifting of sanctions, the U.S. Treasury Department would issue waivers for export of Iranian crude, petrochemical products, and the derivatives as related services, including banking, insurance, transportation, and the like. The U.S. undertakes that in light of the progress of negotiations towards final agreement, frozen or restricted funds and assets of Iran will be released and made fully available. These funds, whether held in the master account or transferred, will be used for any final beneficiary payment determined by the Central Bank of Iran and will be fully available for use. The U.S. undertakes to issue all necessary permits and licenses on this basis. Again, these are things that weren't there prior. The United States or Iran and the United States agreed that an implementation mechanism will be established to oversee the successful implementation of and future commitments to the final agreement. Following the signing of a memorandum of understanding and upon receipt of assurances regarding commitments of implementation of Article 5, 4, 5, 10, and 11 of this memorandum of understanding, and the continuous implementation of these steps, Iran and the United States will enter negotiations for a final agreement solely with the respect of the remaining articles. The final agreement will be approved through binding resolution of the UN Security Council. Now, all of that sounds nice. All of that sounds adorable. Obviously, what it boiled down to was Trump needed the Strait of Hormuz open. He needed it open immediately. As a salesman and carnival barker that he is, he gave away the farm to effectively get the Strait of Hormuz open, knowing full well that this can fall apart at the drop of a hat, and that the chances of reaching the final agreement without further military conflict, I don't know what the number is, but it's damn sure not high. Either way, the U.S. was forced into this position. It was forced to accept these terms as part of further negotiation. Trump needed to get out of the situation, extricate himself from the situation. And this was his pathway of doing so, a humiliating memorandum of understanding. I do want to point out that just because you promise something doesn't mean you deliver on those promises. And this has a lot of flowery language where the majority of the items are pushed into the future, which makes me very skeptical that we get to that future without further conflict. We'll see. In the short term, for the first iteration of the skirmish between Iran and the US obviously came up the loser. So I'm going to end this. That is my take. Where do we see a copy of the draft memorandum? I will put a copy below. In fact, I put both copies below. Again, these are leaks. We have to see the actual memorandum itself. And I can't put this down there. Okay, I'll put this below the video. I'll put both so you can compare yourself in regards to what's in it. We live in wild times, and I get the sense that they're going to get much wilder as we move forward. Currently, I guess we're in balance, but we'll see, I suppose. I get the sense that things are going to get hot before this, let's say, posture changes. We have a chat. Let's go with the chat. I feel Israel is coming, and you know who gets blamed. How can Iran get blamed? I mean, look, here's the thing. In the old days, you could make this case. Oh, I see. So often, oh, thank you for your reporting. Frank Friel, I fear Israel is coming, and you know who will get blamed. Yeah, they're going to try to blame Iran. And the other one is, thanks for your reporting, Jamal. Well, thank you, Jill T. I appreciate it. This is going to be, what I'm saying is true, even though it doesn't matter what your enemy says, especially if your enemy is lying and putting out propaganda, meaning my actions can't be dictated by a person who hates my guts. If Israel is going to do something, then they're going to do something. Iran has to effectively play to its devices, play to its best case. They have played this masterfully up to this point. I assume that they know that they're dealing with somebody who's treacherous. They're dealing with a country that can't be trusted, full of psychopaths, that all things being equal would prefer that they just not exist. And when we attacked them, that was the point. I'm assuming they know that as well, if not better than I do. So if they're coming to some kind of terms or some kind of memorandum of understanding, that they're doing so because they believe it's in their best interest to do so, that they don't trust the US and that they're acting accordingly. That's my assumption. I would have to take that assumption, right? And Lord knows I hope that's the case. I hope that's the case. So we'll see. Needless to say that we're in a new norm. We're in a new norm. And that new norm is effectively going to play itself out in the coming weeks and months. Buckle up. Buckle up. I'm going to end this. I'm going to say like. I'm going to say share. I'm going to say subscribe. I want to thank all of you for joining me. I'll see you first thing in the morning. Thanks all.